Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. Another amazing episode. I love what they did with this episode because it's a continuation of Archie pushing it further and further, because now that video he made last week has spread like wildfire. Took the original video down, but people have been uploading it. The fact of the matter is people at school just staring at him. Because the fact of the matter is Archie's the only one who revealed his face. Like, everyone else had their faces cuffed, which kind of puts a divide between him and the Red Circle, because it's like, well, the Red Circle's like, dude, like, the football team is suffering from you. Like, he's like, well, I didn't wear a mask, so it all fall on me and no one else. But it's actually something kind of interesting, because it kind of coincides with what you already know, because Doily himself is like, you put on, the whole Red Circle thing is a front. This whole thing was the purpose of drawing him out, so it could always be a one-on-one. Because ultimately, and it's something Archie had talked to Veronica about, it's the fact of the matter is, he wants the hood dead, and he wants to be the one to do it too. Like, this is all about revenge. And it's so sad, because, I mean, the situation is like, and it's something that Veronica gets at, it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, like, Archie's a very truthful, like a very earnest and sweet person, but kind of got his ears poisoned by her dad, because he even denied it, because Hermione was like, yeah, you're staying away from Archie because of what he's doing, that video and everything, because even people amongst town, because even the librarian was like, oh my god, not just the Black Hood, what those kids were doing in that video, talking about the Red Hoods, the Red Circle, because of them antagonizing the Black Hood. But it's because ultimately, you know, all Archie's doing is reacting out of just anger and fear, because it's like his dad was attacked, his dad could have died, and it's just like he feels useless and he wants to do something about it. So anger is fueling everything he's doing, plus a little bit of fear. I mean, everyone in the town is on edge, everyone's afraid. But, you know, doing what Hiram had said to him was like, oh, fight fear with fear, fight fire with fire. But the fact of the matter is, he would go as far as denying it, because he had that little talk with Hermione, like, the moment Veronica walked away, he's like, oh, look at this, the Red Circle, the Black Hood, all of this chaos. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure why he's doing it, but he's profiting out of this some shape or form, because he needs everything divided. I mean, Alice isn't making anything easier, because she's pointing the fingers at saying, like, oh, it's the Southside Serpents who are behind us, just because you could tell this is a huge setup. It's meant to favor them in a bad light, because there's already bad blood between the North and the South. It's very like West Side Story when you actually think about it. I never really thought about that too much last season, but I feel like that divide is becoming extremely apparent this season, because everyone's like, oh, obviously he's a South Side because all the people that were attacked were North Sides. They're like, well, that's because the Black Hood wants that. Like, this is all for the purpose of chaos. That's why I can't tell whether Hiram is behind this or not. I don't think he is, but I think he is profiting, because he wants the town to stay divided, because, you know, obviously later on you have Fred being like, no, we can't be divided. We can't turn against each other, because Alice is like, oh, she claims to be trying to protect her family and everything, but everything she does almost contradicts it, because it's like, oh, the whole thing about the code, which obviously Betty's side of the story, and that whole thing I'll dive into in a little bit, but it's like, when it came to the code, she's like, oh, don't worry, I already sent to the rest of town, the town can, like, you know, solve it and everything. He's like, it's like all this stuff about Archie going all vigilante. It's like you have Alice kind of doing the same thing. She did a lot of that last season too, like her journalistic side kicks in a little too much, and I think she goes beyond what she really should in this particular situation. But then that's kind of just, that goes down to the preference of the person. Somebody could be like, well, she's doing just the same amount as anyone else would with the given circumstances and information that's out there. But to me, I feel like she's going almost a little vigilante herself, because she is kind of making this all one-sided, making it like, oh, this person is this, and this, and Fred's like, it's a wacko with a gun. Like, we shouldn't divide ourselves. We should actually be coming together for this. Which there's a whole conversation of, like, you know, Hiram's like, maybe we can use this to our advantage. So, like I said, going back to the whole aspect of, like, he needs it to be chaotic to benefit him in whatever it is he's ultimately trying to do. Maybe this is about buying up real estate in Riverdale, that the fact of the matter is things will be a lot cheaper when there's chaos and people are in fear. Maybe people will be moving out, so maybe he can renovate and buy up buildings in Riverdale. It might be like some kind of construction level stuff, because let's not forget, he wanted to take Fred's business from him, so that's a construction business. So now I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's like, that makes perfect sense. The more people are afraid, the less people want to stay in Riverdale. They'll sell their houses, and he can just swoop in and buy it up, because one of the big heavy hitters of the town was the Blossoms, but now they've kind of fallen on hard times considering everything that happened with Jason. So, but obviously, like, You know, it was kind of an interesting thing that came from Hermione this episode because she was talking to Veronica about like, I hope you're not being led by blind faith. It's like to have loyalty to someone that's 100% good. That's one of the most honorable things. But blind, loyalty is a bad thing. It's kind of a stupid thing, which I can only assume she's talking from personal experience. It's like, so arguably like that's a little hypocritical of you to say that. But it's like ultimately when it goes back to it, I don't think she's blindly loyal to Hiram. I'm thinking it's more like a situation of like she was blindly loyal to him in the past, and that would put her in the circumstances that she's in. Like I brought up last episode, I really do believe it's a situation where Hermione is like too deep. Like she's trying to be by his side and be on his side about everything because it's not just about protecting him, it's about protecting her and her daughter. And it's like if she's not with him, then she's an enemy, and that causes problem. Maybe she won't be there to keep, Hiram's darkness away from Veronica. That's where my mindset is. But then again, there's always a possibility that she is not as, innocent as like, I've always kind of thought she was. Like I said, this season kind of paints her in a picture of like, it's hard to say like, whether she's, culpable with all the stuff that Hiram has done in the past and is currently doing, or whether she's like an unwilling accomplice. Like where does his sins begin and where do hers start? And then, that whole conversation. So it's like, I don't know. That was just kind of an interesting thing to me. It's so crazy about this episode too. Is just the fact of the matter is, obviously, like I said, Archie's focused on revenge, so he's not backing down. Even to the point, like a lot of people, in particular, Southside, kind of look at him as like, oh, like look at this terror person, like, oh, like, because even Tony herself is like, oh, you guys from Northside, you're so being kind of uppity, like they are. I forgot what the exact word which she used. Like, it's just the fact of the matter is that they treat Southside like they're scum, like, oh, everything falls on them. The fact of the matter is, ultimately, I think it's going to be revealed that this guy has absolutely nothing to do with Riverdale. He might be like an outside hire or something like that. Because, like I said, it's all for the purposes of fueling that bad blood between North and South. They already hate each other. But I think this is going to aggravate that even more, make things worse. But they're all looking at like Archie, like, oh, he's like a neo-Nazi or something, just with the way he's radicalizing a group. And like I said, you can understand where that's coming from when you look at it from the other side of things. Of being, it's a situation where it's like no one's willing to see the other side's perspective. It's like, well, the reason why Archie's so up in arms is because people he cares about, Grundy and his dad, were attacked, and it's just like I said, he's angry and he's scared, so. What was kind of interesting to me was what Veronica ultimately decided to do in this episode. She decided to kind of support Archie in his ventures and ended up creating like shirts to represent the red circle since the whole football team backed down. It's like, okay, they don't want to be with you. That's fine. They're just a bunch of cowards. We're going to, she's like made it into a movement. So they start handing out red t-shirts with the red circle. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty smart way. It's almost like silent protest. It's like, you don't have to be very vocal about it. Just you wearing that. It's like, okay, this is where I stand on this whole situation. So it seems like with the way the episode ends up, it does seem like the red circle probably isn't done with. That was pretty sucky what Archie did, though, getting Veronica to get that gun for him, because it's like, holy crap. But, she said she got rid of it, which she didn't. But I was actually surprised about that brawl. I thought it was going to be like a one-on-one fight. Archie runs up, deals the first blow, and it turns into a massive brawl. And there's a moment where Doily pulls out the knife, and then, like, next time we see, he's got the knife in his leg. So most likely, it's painted like, oh, maybe it's a struggle thing. Like, maybe during a struggle, it ended up, someone pushed into him or something, the knife went in his leg. Immediately, my brain goes, or he could have done it himself. I mean, you have Reggie being like, okay, when it happens, what happens? It's like, oh, some South Sides attack me. Like, it's like, good boy. Like, that's the excuse. But it's like, part of me is wondering, like, I was thinking when it's all said and done, I was like, oh, Archie saw you with the knife out. And then it's like, oh, yeah, they stabbed me. It's like, no, that's your knife. That's not their knife. That's your knife. Why are you lying? I thought it was going to be something like that. Because, like, the entire situation, it seems like he's egging Archie on and on. Because in the first season, he was all about, like, guns and stuff like that. He's really pushing that, like, Second Amendment, which, it's his right and everything, I'm not going to judge him for it. And that's not the purpose of this, but it's just like the fact of the matter. It just seems like he's super pushing Archie's like, oh yeah, you need a gun? I know what you're up to. Oh, what are we going to do when you, trying to push Archie to talk about it like an episode or two ago, like, oh yeah, what are we going to do when we find him? It's like, we're not going to do anything. We're going to leave it at the cops. He knew, knowing darn well that he gave Archie the gun. So that begs the question of like, and the way he egged him on is like, oh yeah, getting him to get more ammo and Kevlar. So it's like, I don't know whether he's trying to take advantage of the situation too. Does he have problems with the South Side that he's just trying to egg Archie on till something gets done? Like, what is that all about? You know? I'm just curious to see what he's doing. Maybe he is just concerned about this whole situation, but his demeanor in this episode doesn't seem like someone concerned. He just seems like someone from the shadows trying to just see the world burn, essentially. So that's why I'm just kind of fascinated with how that whole thing works out. So I'm curious whether there's going to be something that comes about that or not. So, I mean, luckily, you know, Veronica showed up with a gun to stop the brawl from getting any worse than it did. So, and I did appreciate like this episode being like, when it was all said and done, it was a situation where Archie was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back. He's like, because it got too real in that moment, and it's like, holy crap. I mean, because doing what he did, going to the Serpent's territory, tagging up the place, waving his gun around, even then you saw how much it bothered him, because it was like, even when the gun was in his hand and they were running away, his hand was shaking. Showing you immediately where Archie's mindset is, that he's not like, you know, he's not some like ready to just kill anybody. Like that shows you that it's not too late, that the darkness constantly hasn't swept him up to the point he's like breathing heavily, like, holy crap, I can't believe I just did that. But you know, it's like, thank you, you know, Veronica, for being there, because if you weren't there, like, he's like, and if I did actually have that gun, if you hadn't lied, and like, if you had brought it to me, like, he's like, I'm afraid of what I would have done. Which she's like, no, you wouldn't have done anything. So I don't know. Ultimately, that does beg the question, like, I mean, like, it's cool to see that they did that. Like, it's just a situation of, like, I mean, the question is, what will Archie do now on? Like, where does the Red Circle stand? You know, like, it seems like he is pulled back about the whole situation. He's not as anger-filled, so it looks like, you know, Veronica was able to kind of bring him back from the brink, you know, so, but, him throwing the gun away in Sweet River made me go like, right, like the whole, you know, kind of shifting gears a little bit and kind of talking about the other side of the episode a tiny bit, just kind of connecting dots. They did say like, oh, where it all started, and they were like, oh, Town Hall, because of the whole Betty storyline, but immediately my brain was like, seeing them throw away, it's like, no, it's Sweet River, right? Because that's where it all really started. Canonically within the story, it's kind of what that meant, because like Jason's murder was like the first big thing that happened to Riverdale. To be fair, it really wasn't. It was just the biggest thing that kind of brought up all these skeletons that were buried. Like, so technically it wasn't the beginning. I don't know if the Black Hood was referencing anything else, but that was kind of the big monumentous moment that changed everything in Riverdale, was, you know, Jason's murder. So that's what I thought that meant specifically about where it all began. So, but we'll kind of have to wait and see about that. But going, like I said, focusing more on the other side, we had Betty getting a letter from the Black Hood about her speech at the end of season 1 about things kind of playing out the way they did, everything leading up to Jason's murder, that basically kind of was almost, it was on the town, that basically Jason's murder was a symptom of something that was already in the town, essentially. And basically he's using that as a platform and saying like, oh, I'm doing this all for Betty. Kevin being there, which it does seem like Kevin and her are on good terms. Like last episode, kind of like, I don't know where they stand. He kind of talks about, well, it's kind of crappy what you did, but you know, it seemed like he was trying to like mend fences a little bit. So that was kind of cool. I wasn't expecting that. But now begs the question of like, you know, what does she do with it? And ultimately she decided she keeps the letter, but tell her mom about the code. Because for her, and I was wondering, I was like, why are you so hell-bent on keeping this to yourself? Because it's like, are you really afraid of the town finding out or something? Because that was what in the Jug said when he finally found out about it. But it's like, no, it's because she was afraid Archie would hate her. Because it's like, maybe Archie would, it's like, oh, because of my speech, this psychopath went off and ended up hurting your dad, and you know? And one person she cannot stand hating her would be Archie, you know? So they've been best friends for such a long time, so. And there's a whole little something yes, something no between them, obviously. So that whole complicated situation there. I mean, it is interesting that the code ended up being from a book that was connected to Betty. And it's like one of her favorite books. It's like a Nancy Drew novel or something, which begs the question, it had to be someone that knows Betty well enough. It can't just be someone who pulled, like, that's a book that she cherishes or something. So it's like, why would that, only someone who knows her well enough could do that. So not unless it's someone who does have a connection to Betty. Who knows? A big thing in this episode was the whole situation between her, Jug, and Tony. Because obviously, like, Tony and Jughead were working on it, trying to cipher the code, and then he finds out, like, Betty's like, oh, we can work on this together, and Jug's like, well, I can't already start with Tony. Oh, well, why don't I bring Kevin over and we all try and work together? Then that obviously turned into the situation I kind of elaborated earlier, where Tony talked about the fact of the matter, specifically Betty, because it's like, well, the fact of the matter is you're so judgmental. I mean, more so than anything, because it's like her mom's the one spreading all the kind of extra hate towards Southside, so... But then also kind of drops the whole info about Jug and the whole him sitting with the serpents, because she still doesn't know about the fact is that wasn't on his bike he got hurt, that he got beat up. He still doesn't let that out. I don't know if it seemed like he might have gone in that direction, but she didn't really give him the time to explain. So ultimately, at the end of it all, the cat's out the bag. Like, now Alice knows, the sheriff knows, the mayor knows, everyone. That, like I said, going back to it, it's just like, holy crap, like, Alice is like the ultimate, like, oil in this situation. Well, no, I guess she's more like a match, because it's like the oil is already there. The oil is between North Side and South Side, that hate that's already there. You sprinkle in a few sparks here and there from the towns that's already being ready to implode, and you just have her like lighting even more matches and spreading the fire to a certain extent, which I'm not trying to blame her, but it's a situation of, she herself kind of admits it this episode with the whole Polly situation. It's like, I don't get why you girls are doing what you're doing. Like, you might not like the way I'm handling things, but it's like, because I love you and I'm scared and I'm worried, that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. And it's just like, you guys treat me like I'm a monster. Like, yeah, Alice has her issues and everything, that's no secret. I mean, if it weren't for your issues, that's why your family your daughters kind of rebel against you the way they do. So, because it's always kind of something. So, but I don't know. It's really hard to explain, like, why. Like I said, you get where she's coming from, but it's just like, you're kind of making things worse. And it's just, maybe, this whole situation has got you on edge to the point, like, okay, you're willing to do and push anything, because it's like, okay, we need to shut down Southside and take all that money we're going to use there and put it towards protecting our, reinforcing our police department to get more deputies on the job to handle this situation. And even going like, yeah, I don't know about the way Archie's handling it, but at the very least he's doing something, kind of challenging Fred, who's like, oh yeah, look at Fred Andrews trying to turn the other cheek. It's like, no, he out of anyone has the biggest reason to hate this dude and to just want him taken down. Like, he got shot, he almost died, almost left his son behind. So it's like, he would have the biggest reason to hate, but it shows you the fact is that he's not, that he's saying, let's be reasonable about this. I'm very curious to see how that all goes, especially considering the whole, like, Hermione and Hiram situation, which in retrospect, I didn't even think about it until just now. They have not been they were in the same room this episode, but they have not directly talked. The last time Hermione talked to Fred was last season before he got shot. So it's just kind of interesting. I guess there's going to be more conversations between them going forward about this whole situation. Them probably going to have a face-to-face between Hiram and Fred coming up soon enough, I think. So, like I said, I kind of feel bad for the mayor too, just because she's in such a tough spot. Because it's like, yeah, she wants to protect this town. Her daughter's growing up in this town. So I was like, yeah, what's happening to this town affects her. No, it's a time when people are angry and scared, and Archie's a prime example of what happens when that anger and fear kind of consume you. So, like I said, from top to bottom, an amazing episode. Almost forgot. Let's not forget that Betty gets a call at the end of the episode too. I wonder, is that going to tie in or something with the whole like dark Betty aspect? Because that's something that conversation-wise has flared up again. I mean, to a certain extent, it kind of flared up when the whole like helping with the pop situation, as well as the FP situation that she kind of blackmails Cheryl. So that's still there to a certain extent. So I don't know if that's going to pop up at all this season. I mean, that might have been directly connected to Polly and stuff like that. So now that the whole Jason and Polly situation has been resolved, maybe that's not an issue. But I think that's still something like just everything in Betty's life is kind of accumulated to create that, like that alternate persona. It's not going, because you can kind of tell that Betty kind of has anger issues to a certain extent. Remember, because last season she'd clench her fists so hard that her nails will start digging into her palms. So it's like something like that doesn't just magically disappear. I think that's Maybe that's something we'll see kind of get dived into this season. Maybe that's what this killer, quote unquote, sees in her. Like, I think she's just a means to an end. Like, maybe there is that legitimacy behind, like, oh, I'm just using this as an, why I'm doing what I'm doing because he's obsessed or crazy. But I think it's more so like the whole aspect of chaos, of just trying to sow these little things of being like, oh, it's this and it's this, when it's all, like I said, everything is a red herring. What the Black Hood's true motives is, whether Hiram is directly or just connected or whether he's benefiting from it, all questions we just kind of have to wait to find out. I'm super excited to see what goes down in the next episode with everything. Also, what does this situation mean also going forward for Jug? Because he's being told, like, Jug is smack dab in the middle of this situation to an even larger degree. I almost completely forgot to even talk about it. It was like the whole, like, well, on multiple levels, because, growing up in the North, but being connected to the South and now being part of South because he's going to school there now. And now there's a whole aspect of being torn between who he is and who, like, everyone kind of wants, the South wants him to be, plus his lineage as a serpent because of his dad and everything, plus the whole Tony and Betty situation, which is just going to get worse and worse. You can just see that because you can, to a small degree in this episode, and it already showed it, just them being on different sides in this whole situation. Rather than talking to each other, they just kind of got so wrapped up in everything else. Him helping Tony with this whole thing, Betty dealing with that letter on her own. Like, she couldn't confide in her boyfriend about it, and he couldn't, it's a situation of like, well, it's not like Jug would have known that she was in trouble, like him ignoring her call and everything, but still it's a situation of like, wasn't necessarily there for her as a boyfriend, which I'm not trying to demonize him. It's just a situation of just things weren't in sync this episode. And I think going forward, we're going to be seeing that a lot more, especially with Tony in the picture. Like I said, also with the state that Riverdale was in, plus like the divide between North and South. Out of anyone the most, I think Jughead's going to be the most divided. And not only between him and Betty and the whole Tony situation, but also him and Archie, because, now that the situation has turned to what it is, because he doesn't elaborate, but obviously he was trying to tell everyone, it's like, no, like, Archie's milquetoast, he's not going to do it, you shouldn't worry about him, because that's his best friend he's trying to look out for, but he can't let the South Side know about that either, so he's trying to keep him, so now it's going to be, he's going to be divided between his loyalty to his best friend, as well as, ensuring his own safety, as well as, probably seeking the truth, because everyone's going to be like, oh, Southside's responsible for this, but, I don't know, maybe ultimately it'll come down to Jughead being the one that ultimately figures it all out. Like, this is all speculation. I'm interested to see where, like, all those dynamics going forward as well. So just something to kind of keep in the back of my mind, as well as anyone's mind that might be listening to this. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.